Sarvar Lodvi of Al Hilal Bank. So let me pass over the reins, and you can join me in welcoming Mr. Sarvar Lodvi.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'll just give you a brief introduction about our panelists, and then we'll have them all do a short introduction of whatever they're doing, about their institution, what is their current role, how they are helping in development of the Islamic financial markets. And after that, we will open the floor to questions from the forum. Okay, we have today with us on our distinguished panel, Hizzad, Mohd, Radzuan, Tajuddin, Head of Islamic Capital Market Development, Securities Commission of Malaysia. Mr. Tajuddin graduated from the National University of Malaysia in 1987, majoring in finance. He has been with Malaysian Securities Commission for the past 18 years. Our second panelist is Dr. Ahmed, Karouad, member of the Board of Directors and General Manager, Libyan Capital Markets, Libya. He has been with, in 2007, Mr. Ahmed Karouad was appointed as Director of the main branch of the Libyan Capital Market. And currently, Dr. Ahmed is the General Manager since 2011. Our third panelist today is Mr. Ahmed Baharuddin, Director General of Labuan FSA, Malaysia. Mr. Baharuddin is the Director General of this Labuan FSA Authority. He is also the board member of International Islamic Financial Market in Bahrain. He started his career with Bank Negara, Malaysia since 1986. The next panelist is Ahmed Saleh Al-Marhoon. He is the Director General, Muscat Securities Market, Oman. Mr. Ahmed holds an MBA degree from United Kingdom. He has worked in public and private sector organizations in leading positions. Then we have Mr. Najmul Hassan, Advisor to CEO and Head of Remedial Asset Management. Mr. Najmul Hassan has been involved with various banks within the Asian and the African markets, and presently he is working in ICT Jeddah. So I would ask the distinguished panelists to please first of all give a brief introduction of themselves, about their institutions, and what is their present role in terms of contributing to the Islamic financial markets, and also share their experience both from regulators and practitioners' point of view. So we'll start with Mr. Ahmed Marhoon. Specifically, if you can tell us something about what do you see is the potential of the Islamic capital markets in Oman, and what are the challenges you may be facing, and how do you think of addressing them?
And ladies and gentlemen, I would like first to thank the organizers for their invitation and for organizing this excellent conference. And this type of conferences are really needed at this particular time, since Oman starting the Islamic financial activities or services. And I'm asked by the chairman of the panel to give a little introduction about the, and my introduction will be short and relevant to the panel discussions. And it will be about the financial institutions and their role in providing the services, the financial services to the support to the investors, and also to the contribution toward the development of the economies. And the institutions, financial institutions, are the main, in fact, organizers of the relationship between the depositors who make the money supply and the borrowers who are the borrower who search for the funds to finance their investments. And for the past 4 decades or so, the conventional banks here in the Sultanate of Oman has played a very major role in the contribution of the economic prosperity. And last year was the first royal decree issued to allow the Islamic financial services to be operating here in Oman, and we have seen this year 2 banks established newly offering their services on Sharia-compliant principles. Conventional banks also were allowed to open Islamic windows, so to compete also with the newly established banks. And I believe the combination of the conventional banks along with the Islamic banks will help provide more options, either on the investment side or also on the financing sides. And that will help our economy and also will give more options to the investors to use their surplus money. Talking about the financial, Islamic financial services in Oman, we are the new entrant, in fact, into this field, and we believe that there will be a significant growth in this area of financial services, of Islamic financial services. And the potential is going to be very significant. The reason for that is because there is a very low penetration in the Islamic world, in fact, and that also applies to Oman as a new country allowing these activities. We would expect that this activities of Islamic financial service will, take a good road. To give some ideas or some figures on how the Islamic financial service is growing, there are certain figures suggested by some research that last year or the two-year trend, the total issued financial instruments in the world reached $86 billion. And the year 2011, the increase was 62%. This indicates the huge potentials of the Islamic financial services growth, either in Oman or in the world. And there is, in view of this, a strong or expected strong growth in Oman, I think the regulators, either the Capital Market Authority or ourselves, the Muscat Securities Market, are expecting or supposed to take our responsibility more seriously in order to win the confidence of the investors and the clients, and also to pave the way for long-term Islamic financial growth. We, in Muscat Securities Market, think that this area of Islamic financial services will add value not only to the economy and provide options to the investors and projects financiers, but also to the securities, the exchange itself, through the issuing of various financial instruments, which will be listed in the securities market. And if that happens, we believe that will deepen the Muscat Securities activities, in addition to providing investment opportunities to the investors. I think.
Thank you very much, Mr. Al-Marhoon.
Thank you.
I would just like to ask Mr. Radzuan Tajuddin to maybe he can share, because I think Malaysia is one of the most developed capital markets globally. So how the regulator has been instrumental in developing the market, what challenges they have faced, how the market has evolved, and maybe then in Oman we can make use of some of those experiences.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First and foremost, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to be here today to share the Malaysian experience in terms of developing in the Islamic capital market. So I'm from the Securities Commission Malaysia. We are the capital market regulator to develop the capital market. And within the Securities Commission, we have a dedicated division within the Commission responsible to ensure an orderly development of the Islamic capital markets. So the Islamic capital market, if I may share, comprises of the Islamic equity markets as well as the sukuk market. In between, we also develop the intermediation market, which is basically the Islamic fund industry. And the portfolios of those funds can be sukuks, can be portfolio of securities or any other instruments such as money markets, derivatives, and whatnot. So if we were to develop the Islamic fund management industry, basically the various underlying needs to be Sharia compliant in nature. So what we have done basically in Malaysia is to invest in developing the infrastructure, so that basically Islamic capital market activities can grow in a manner that is orderly. When I say orderly means that you have to put in place the proper regulatory framework, the proper legal framework, regulatory framework, so that basically it will support the growth of the Islamic capital market. Now, when I say growth of the Islamic capital market in a manner that is orderly, it means that when you put the various laws, the various legislation, the various rules and regulations, it has to be accommodative to support the growth of Islamic finance transactions, especially Islamic capital market activities. At the same time, when you regulate the market by building the various infrastructure, the rules, regulations, the laws, it has to be put in a manner it also facilitates innovation, financial innovation. At the same time, ensure that basically there are proper Sharia governance process in place. So first and foremost, as I mentioned, is to put in place the legal and regulatory infrastructure. In the context of Malaysia, we are basically lucky in the sense that Malaysia is a former colony of the British Empire. So it applies the English common laws. And the English common laws, believe it or not, facilitates Islamic finance transactions. The principle of, for instance, the principles of trust, the principle of trust, the principle of transfer, the principle of beneficial ownership facilitates Islamic finance transaction, because Islamic finance is all about trade, right? You create a sukuk market, you create an indebtedness through trade, and the legal infrastructure that facilitates that is through the application of some of the English common laws. For instance, for an ijarah to be structured in Malaysia, it allows for the separation between legal ownership and beneficial ownership, right? And allows for an asset to be leased back to the originator. That form of structure allows for the creation of indebtedness and allows company to basically raise capital via an ijarah structure. So, in a sense, basically, the type of laws that you apply should be able to accommodate Islamic finance transactions. One other single most important framework that you have to basically develop is a proper Sharia governance framework.
So I think because of the paucity of time, because we also have to take some questions, I'm just interrupting you at this time, sorry about that. So basically what you're saying is that a very transparent and clear governance framework from legal point of view, and the laws and regulations have to be in place. That is the key factor for success.
Yes.
In terms of, okay, now I'll just request the next panelist, Mr. Ahmed Karouad, because in Libya it's pretty much in line with Oman. It's almost on the same stage. So maybe you can also brief us a bit about what's happening in Libya as of now in terms of developing the regulations.
السلام عليكم. بداية حابب أشكر سلطة عمان شعبا وحكومة على حفاوة الاستقبال، ونشكر الجهة المنظمة على دعوتها لنا للمشاركة في هذا المؤتمر الإسلامي الدولي الأول في مسقط والتعريف بالخدمات المالية الإسلامية في ليبيا. صراحة قبل أعطي مختصر على تاريخ الخدمات المالية الإسلامية في ليبيا، قبل انجلاء ثورة 17 فبراير كانت الخدمات المالية الإسلامية في ليبيا كانت تكون محدودة أو كانت تكون فيها عراقيل من الحكومة السابقة صراحة، والحمد لله تحررنا الآن. ففي المرحلة الماضية صراحة كان فيها محاولات خجولة من بعض المصارف لفتح نوافذ إسلامية، وكان فيها عراقيل من الحكومة، والمتمثلة في مصرف واحد من أصل 14 مصرف فتحوا حوالي نوافذ بعض النوافذ الإسلامية، فكانت فيه عراقيل كبيرة لهذه المؤسسة. وبالإضافة إلى كان سوق المال سباق في مساهمة وإنشاء في صندوق استثماري يتوافق مع الشريعة الإسلامية في 2009، لكن للأسف الحكومة كذلك تم إيقاف هذا النشاط من قبل الحكومة. بعد 17 فبراير طبعا ورغبة من المستثمرين أو من الليبيين في مزاولة الأنشطة بالتوافق مع الشريعة الإسلامية، صراحة الحمد لله بعد تحرير ليبيا ب7 شهور خرج قانون أو تم تعديل قانون المصارف الليبي بإضافة فصل أو باب خاص بالصيرفة الإسلامية، اللي هو خرج في شهر 5 سنة 2012. وسعت الحكومة الحالية إلى تفعيل هذا القانون، وذلك من خلال يعني خروج لوائح تنفيذية لهذا القانون، ونتوقع إن شاء الله في نهاية هذه السنة حيكون خروج هذه اللوائح التنفيذية لرغبة عارمة من قبل المستثمرين صراحة في الحصول على ترخيص لمزاولة الخدمات المالية الإسلامية. طبعا بالنسبة للمصرف المركزي متقدم له حوالي أكثر من 14 مصرف إسلامي للحصول على هذا الترخيص. فدور السوق المالي الليبي في تجهيز البيئة التشريعية الخاصة بعملية الاكتتابات الخاصة بهذه المصارف الإسلامية والأدوات المالية اللي تقدر تستثمر أو تستثمر فيها المصارف الإسلامية. فعكفنا نحن سوق المال بالتعاون مع أعضاء مجلس إدارة سوق المال على إعداد اللوائح اللي تساهم في خلق أو في تفعيل سوق المال الليبي من خلال الخدمات المالية الإسلامية. زي ما عارفين حضراتكم أن سوق المال الليبي تأسس في 2007، وحجم الإقبال عليه ضعيف نوعا ما، لأن لا يوجد فيه أي تنوع أو في أي منتجات إسلامية صراحة. جل الشركات المدرجة فيه أو الليست بسوق المال هي شركات أو مصارف تقليدية وشركات تأمين. فساعيين في 2013 أن تكون فيه أدوات مالية إسلامية، يعني مواكبة يعني رغبة من الشعب الليبي لتنوع النشاطات وتفعيل الخدمات المالية الإسلامية. أما بالنسبة للتأمين التكافلي صراحة خلينا نقول في ليبيا التأمين التكافلي كان يكون شبه معدوم صراحة أو غير مفعل، لكن الحمد لله من خلال الأيام الماضية تم صدور قرار ينظم التأمين التكافلي في ليبيا، ونتوقع لنا إن شاء الله حيكون فيه يعني مزاولة هذا النشاط وتفعيله من بداية 2013. هذه نبدأ مختصرة على الوضع المصارف الإسلامية أو وضع الخدمات المالية الإسلامية في ليبيا. بالإضافة إلى أن سوق المال من 2010 باشا في نشاط التوعية والتدريب في الموضوع الصيرفة الإسلامية. وحتى نعطيكم مؤشر عام، في 2010 كان عدد المتدربين حوالي 20 شخص في طيلة السنة، لكن حاليا خلال 3 أشهر يعني حوالي عدد المتدربين يتجاوز 220 شخص. هذا بالتعاون مع بعض المؤسسات الدولية المعروفة في منح الشهائد الصيرفة الإسلامية وكذا. فهذا يدل على رغبة الشعب الليبي في تغيير أو تحويل المصارف التقليدية كذلك إلى مصارف إسلامية والتعامل معها. وشكرا.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. It's a good overview of where we stand in Libya now and how it is evolving. Next, I would invite Mr. Najmul Hassan to give a practitioner's point of view, because he has worked in different markets, how the regulations have helped him or otherwise in offering the Islamic banking instruments in the capital markets in the various jurisdictions he's worked in?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Najmul Hassan, and I have been involved in Islamic banking for the past about 12 years, starting from a very small bank called Mizan Bank in Pakistan, which was a small investment bank, and then it grew up now to be a 300-branch bank after acquisition of Societe Generale. Then I moved on to Africa, and I was looking after a bank in Africa called Gulf African Bank. This is based out of Kenya, and this bank started on as the first Islamic bank in Kenya, and then it has since then grown and become a profitable institution. And so therefore, this was a new experience of introducing Islamic banking in a country where Muslims were in minority, because the percentage of Muslims in Kenya is about 15 to 20%, depending on which side you are. So a small market, but there Islamic banking came in and is now expanding into Uganda, into Rwanda, into Tanzania. I have then since then moved since last year into Islamic Development Bank in Jeddah. I'm in ICD, which is an equivalent of IFC. What IFC is to World Bank, ICD is to Islamic Development Bank. This is the investment arm, the private sector investment arm of Islamic Development Bank, and the mandate that we have is to establish Islamic banks in Muslim wherever IDB is present in the 54 countries that it's there. And right now we have in 10 different countries Islamic financial institutions. I happen to be on the board of Maldives Islamic Bank in Maldives, in Burj Bank in Pakistan, in Tanvil Africa, which is also in West Africa, looking after Islamic Bank of Senegal, Mauritania, Niger, and Guinea. So you see, I've seen this Islamic banking progressing from a very nascent level, the startup positions in many of these countries. It's just in an introductory phase. And the challenges that you see across, whether they are in Pakistan when it started in 2000 or in Maldives where it started last year or Kenya, I think more or less it's about the same. Like any industry would face in infancy, obviously there is this regulatory angle because of the fact that the laws that are there in the country, they typically do not support Islamic banking, and especially if there is a dispute which arises, because a lot of these documents that are being used in Islamic banks, whether they are for ijara or musharka or diminishing musharka or istisna or whatever, these laws have not been tested in the court of law. How the court is going to interpret them, whether they will be using the English law to interpret some of these, where is the risk really residing, is the really risk with the Islamic financial institution, or is it with the lessee or not, and these need to be tested. When there is a dispute that arises and the dispute is taken into the court of law, and at that time you will see the courts taking a decision, and I think that is extremely important, and that's one of the reasons why you would see Islamic banking growing slowly, is because this testing period is still going on. People want to really understand how these laws will be interpreted in the court of law, and for that, in order so that there is justice and equity as far as these decisions are taken. The other challenge that I see commonly across in all markets is the liquidity management within an Islamic bank. All of us know that AAA-rated short-term instruments availability, both at the local level or at the international level, are few, far and few, other than, I think, the few instruments that I know of issued by Islamic Development Bank, $3.5 billion, or a few other instruments. There is a dearth of Islamic banking instruments availability. Now, clearly, to run an Islamic bank without support of a treasury, which can actually manage liquidity, is a huge challenge. And that makes Islamic banking extremely inefficient, because I can see in many of the banks where I am at the board today that the banks are maintaining a very high rate of liquidity because of the fact that they do not have any instrument where they can place a fund. So therefore, if the level playing field is there with conventional bank, Islamic banks immediately come at a disadvantage, in the sense that on the surplus liquidity that they are holding, they are unable to make any profits. Obviously, there are some products that are available in the market, which includes commodity muraba and tawarruks that are there. But the very nature of these products and the perception that these products have in the market, I think that is, that is there. My own experience in last 12 years, as far as success of Islamic banks is concerned, and I've seen host of Islamic banks, some of them doing extremely well, others doing not so well, others, quite honestly, really failing in the task of being able to do Islamic banking. And one of the foremost things I've seen is the top management, whether they believe this to be just another product that they are selling. If they believe that this is just like any other product, like in a supermarket, you are selling pork and you're also selling halal beef. That's one attitude I've seen of management. And then there are people who are very committed to the fact that they want, an alternate way of banking to be there. They are driven by faith. They are driven by the fact that they want to do this more than just like any other job. I think in these cases, I've seen success being there and the growth being phenomenal. I give the example of Mizan, which started on with one branch in 2001, with 300 branches now, 200 billion worth of deposits and huge profitability. I see example of Gulf African Bank again, starting on with a very sort of huge loss-making operation in the first year, then within 18 months converting, again the management being there, very committed to Islamic finance. So I think that's something that I feel sometimes we miss out. We miss out the softer side of Islamic finance. We believe that it's all about documentation, rules, regulation, understanding. I think what it is about is this ability to be able to understand what Islamic banking is, because Islamic banking products are knowledge-based. These are not products that are being sold. It's knowledge being sold, and knowledge is something that takes time to be acquired. It is not really knowledge of Islamic banking. It's not just floating around that one day it will descend on someone and he'll become an Islamic banker. But knowledge is acquired painstakingly with a lot of difficulty, and that's where the challenge lies. And I think unless the management at the top level is committed, they do not put enough resources to ensure that this knowledge part of Islamic banking is taken care of, and that's where their first pitfall and downfall comes.
Thank you very much, Najim sir, especially elaborating on the softer side of Islamic banking. Now I would request Mr. Ahmed Baharuddin, Director General Labuan IFC Malaysia. And I would like Mr. Ahmed, for you to elaborate a bit on the role of your institution, plus what is the key success factor for the Malaysian market? Is it demand side, that demand side is more as compared to other market? It is supply side, whether there is more product innovation, or do you think it's the conducive regulatory environment? Where will you pinpoint your finger? Which is the factor which has led to this impressive growth within the Malaysian model?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Assalatu wassalamu ala anbiya'i mursalin wa ala alihi washabihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting us today to be in this panel. First of all, perhaps I could introduce myself. I am from the Labuan Financial Services Authority, the International Center for Malaysia. I used to be working in the central bank, heading the Islamic Banking and Takaful Department. I've been involved in Islamic banking for some years now, and my first stint in Islamic banking, developing the Islamic banking, is when we had our first financial sector master plan in the year 2001. Where in that particular master plan, we decided to put a target that we want to see that the growth of Islamic finance to grow to 20% in the year 2010. So that sets a target in a way for Islamic finance to grow in Malaysia. Yeah? So let me move on to this particular topic in regards to what do you see as the key success factors of developing the Islamic finance in Malaysia. To me, I would categorize that to three areas. One is the commitment by the government. Second is the Sharia governance that we have put in place. Third being the market infrastructure that we have put in place. Let me first touch on the government commitment. When we decided to have the target in the blueprint, it was actually socialized with the government sector, and we decided to put an ESCO that comprised the central bank governor as well as all the other government agencies to come together to actually decide if there are going to be obstacles in the development of Islamic finance, those obstacles needed to be removed. For instance, one of the areas that needed to be ironed out is the tax considerations. While we put several tax incentives for Islamic finance to develop, there are several areas where the tax considerations are not necessarily be transparent to the Inland Revenue Board, and they are not so certain as to whether such transactions can be given certain treatment. So, for instance, Ijarah offers a transfer of asset ownership, so, and then there will be a leasing enrichments that requires stamp duties as well. If a particular leasing transactions are taken up by a conventional system, that leasing transaction may not necessarily have the ownership element into the asset transaction, so therefore they won't attract any particular real property gain tax element. So we need to be able to neutralize the tax element. So what we did in the government is to set up a tax neutrality committee, which comprises of us at Central Bank, plus the Inland Revenue Board and the Ministry of Finance, to come together and decide that these are things that needed to be removed or ironed out in order for us to develop further Islamic finance. So that's important. The government come together, decided on a particular target, and move on to set up the infrastructure to actually develop Islamic finance. That's one government commitment. Second is on the Sharia governance framework. My colleague just sort of gave a brief introduction of the laws and whatnot. But in regards of Sharia governance framework in Malaysia, we have a national or a central body, so to say, under the Central Bank of Malaysia, as well as under the Securities Commission, that presides and pronounces on matters in regard to Sharia when it comes to Islamic finance transactions, as well as takaful transactions. So it provides consistency and certainty in respect of those instruments. So what we did is actually to come and bring up these issues to the Sharia Advisory Council, and they would deliberate on those matters and come up with the pronouncements that helps the industry to grow. So, and in recent times, we had put it in our law, in the Central Bank Act, as well as in the Securities Commission Act, that all the decisions of the Sharia Advisory Councils are binding on the court even. The reason being is that we wanted to put certainty in respect of Islamic finance. We don't want anybody or any particular judge to, for the matter, to suggest that they are actually going to be sort of reversing what has been sort of decided early on by the Sharia advisors. We don't want that because it creates uncertainty in the market. So by so doing, we create certain form of certainty in the Islamic finance world. So that's the Sharia governance framework in Malaysia. Well, we have it at the national level, or sorry, at the central level, at both the Bank Negara as well as we also ask individual institutions to have their own Sharia committee to deliberate on Sharia matters. The third thing is the market infrastructure. What are needed to be put in place? One is the education system. We have created a university for Islamic finance, for instance, to actually offer graduate studies for masters as well as PhD programs. For the practitioners, the Institute of Training of Malaysia provides training to the officers of banks as well as insurance companies, because what necessarily for us is actually to convert those conventional bankers as well as insurers to become the Islamic finance practitioners. So the training at the practical level is needed. So we created an education system where it allows the transition from the conventional expertise to the Islamic financial expertise. And at the university level, at the undergraduate level, several Malaysian universities are actually offering Islamic finance. So it helps provide a stream flow of talent into the system. So I'm now talking about the three items that have been put in place that supports the growth of Islamic finance in Malaysia. And in Bank Negara Malaysia itself, when we started off doing this in 2001, the market share of Islamic finance was only about 6%. Over now, a period of now more than 10 years, we have seen market to grow to become 25% of the total banking system assets. So anyway, that was the result of what had been put in place in Malaysia, in short.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ahmed Baharuddin. Now we'll open for the questions from the forum. Please, if you may first introduce yourself, and if you have a question from a specific panelist, then just direct it to him and then ask the question, please. Can somebody please bring the mic?
My name is Ahmed Al-Houthi. I'm from Muscat Securities Market, and my question for my boss, Mr. Ahmed bin Saleh Al-Marhoon. Ustad Ahmed, and you may allow me ask my question in Arabic. It's much easier for me. أستاذ أحمد، ذكرت أنه من المحمود أن يكون هناك كومبينيشن بين الصيرفة الإسلامية في البنوك التجارية والبنوك الإسلامية. لكن ألا تعتقد أنه من الظلم وعدم وجود العدالة في أن يتم طرح البنوك الإسلامية طرح اكتتاب أولي، يعني أنها ما ظهرت حتى إلى الوجود، وأن تعطي السلطات والمشرع الحق للبنوك التجارية بأن تفتح نفس المجال، نفس الصيرفة، ثم تلك البنوك لديها القدرات والإمكانيات متوفرة ولديها حتى كل الفاسيلتيز متوفرة، بينما البنوك الإسلامية التي طرحت اكتتابها لا زالت يعني تبحث عن إمكانية في أن تدخل إلى السوق. أليس من المفترض أن المشرع قد يعني استعجل في هذا الأمر؟ كان من المفترض على الأقل أن يعطي المجال للبنوك الإسلامية أن تفتح، أن تبدأ، ثم يفتح المجال أمام البنوك التجارية لأن تعمل. يعني من وجهة نظرك هل هذه عدالة؟
سؤال وجيه الحقيقة. هو يعني أنا برد بالعربي على اعتبار أنه كان السؤال بالعربي، وبالتالي كنت أشرت في المقدمة بأنه إحنا جدد حقيقة دخلنا أو ما بدأنا إلى الآن، وسنبدأ قريبا إن شاء الله من خلال بنكين مرخصين للعمل في هذا المجال اللي هي توافق الأنشطة اللي توافق الشريعة، وكذلك بعض البنوك التقليدية التي يسمح لها أن تقوم بنفس النشاط. لا، أنا أعتقد بأنه وهذا ما تفضل فيه كان رئيس وزراء ماليزيا السابق في كلمته، وأشار بأنه جيد أن يكون البنوك تعمل جنبا إلى جنب، الكونفنشنال اللي هي التقليدية والبنوك التي تعمل وفقا لتوافق الشريعة الإسلامية. وأنا في اعتقادي بأنه اقتصادنا بحاجة إلى يعني المنافسة الشديدة، بمعنى بأنه لا يكون هناك احتكار من جانب واحد لخدمة معينة. في الماضي عمان ما سمح فيها بهذه البنوك التي تعمل وفقا لتوافق الشريعة أن تعمل، وبالتالي ربما شريحة كبيرة من المجتمع حرمت من نشاط معين، واستحوذت البنوك التقليدية على كل الأنشطة البنكية اللي موجودة في البلد. أنا في اعتقادي بأنه من الآن إحنا بدأنا نشهد هناك هذا التنافس يعطي يعني عائده. يعني أنا أرى بأنه حاليا نتيجة دخول النشاط الصيرفة الإسلامية، أرى بأنه البنوك التقليدية أصبحت الآن تحاول أن تسعى للحصول على يعني زبائن جدد بفوائد بنكية منافسة. لا أعتقد بأنه إحنا يجب أن نركز على القروض من الاستهلاكية فقط. أنا أتمنى بأن البنوك الإسلامية أن يكون نشاطها يعني يركز على خدمة الاقتصاد وليس للاستهلاك، بمعنى أن يكون القروض مربوطة بتمويل مشاريع أو تمويل أنشطة تجارية اللي تخلق إضافة في للاقتصاد. أعتقد يعني لضيق الوقت ربما أريد أن أكون مختصر، لكن أريد أن أشير إلى جانب آخر وما يتعلق بهذا الجانب، نمو الصيرفة الإسلامية. نمو الصيرفة الإسلامية على مستوى العالم بتأخذ منحى الحقيقة يعني متقدم، وبالتالي نحن يعني أعتقد عندما سمحت السلطات والبنك المركزي بأن البنوك التجارية أن تعمل أو تفتح الأنشطة للصرف الإسلامية، أنا أعتقد هذا كان مناسب جدا لخلق المنافسة الشديدة التي لا تركز على القرض الاستهلاكي، تركز على تمويل المشاريع والأنشطة التجارية. شكرا.
I think I would just like to add one point in this. Apart from the competition, I think another aspect is the availability of Islamic banking products to the wider community in Oman. Because obviously the new Islamic banks will take their time in establishing their branches, and we might have, in that case, Islamic banking, but it's not available to wider population in Oman because they don't have such a big branch network. So from customer experience point of view, and to give the wider choice to the customers also, I think initially it's a very good strategy to allow the other conventional banks also to. Any other questions?
No.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إبراهيم بن ناصر بن سالم الصوافي، أمين الفتوى بمكتب سماحة المفتي العام للسلطنة. سؤالي لأحد الأخوين الماليزيين عن الأزمة المالية الأخيرة التي عصفت النظام الاقتصادي العالمي، فبما أنهم يعني في عمق الاقتصاد الإسلامي في ماليزيا، وماليزيا تشهد تطور، يعني مدى تأثير الأزمة العالمية الأخيرة التي مرت في العالم على الاقتصاد الإسلامي، وهل كما سنسمع أن الاقتصاد الإسلامي بمنأى أو نسبة تأثره ضعيفة بالأزمة المالية، وإذا كان يقولان كذلك ما هي الأسباب الحقيقية التي فعلا أدت إلى عدم تأثر القطاع المصرفي الإسلامي بالأزمة المالية التي مرت بالعالم في السنتين الأخيرتين؟ شكرا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اسمي منور حميد، أنا مدرس في كلية تقنية نزوة المحاسبة. My question is to the panelist. Could you please let us know, being a student and teacher of accounting and finance, I'm interested to find it out that what steps have been taken from Malaysian scholars, Islamic scholars, to introduce international accounting standards are there. I mean, what steps you have taken to upgrade an Islamic standards by International Accounting Standards International Board, ISB. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll take both the questions one by one. So maybe if you'd like to answer the first question about the impact of the financial crisis on Islam.
Okay, I will attempt to answer the question relating to the financial crisis. Well, Malaysia is an open economy, and being an open economy, we are subjected to the instability that originates from the developed market. While we are an open economy, our exposure in respect our exports are the ones that are being affected, and not so much of our financial market system. Yeah? So what I'm saying is that while we see a downturn in the financial market and the downgrading of sovereign debt instruments in the global world, particularly in the European countries, Malaysians do not have those instruments in their banking books. So much so that therefore they are not very much affected by the global crisis that are originating from the holding of those instruments and assets in European banks and so forth, in sovereign debts. So, but we are affected by the second order effect, because we are an exporting economy. When the developing economies were having problems, we are having problems exporting to those countries. And what had happened in Malaysia and in the rest of the region is that we had now depend a lot more intra-regional kind of trade. We are exporting a lot more to China, Singapore, Indonesia, and so forth. So that sort of buffers the impact of the downturn in recent economy to Malaysia in general. So in respect of Islamic finance, the instruments that we have in Malaysia are very much instruments that are supporting the local economic growth in Malaysia. For instance, there are a lot of infrastructure projects in Malaysia, like we are developing a light rail transport system, which uses some of the Islamic instruments. There were a lot of also consumer financing that are supported by the Islamic finance. And so these instruments are all tied to a certain underlying assets on its own itself, so much so that, and these assets are actually related to those assets that are being used in Malaysia as well as in the surrounding region. So we are not impacted by the European debt crisis or the American debt crisis, because we are actually contained in a way in the local regional market rather than the international market. Yeah? But Islamic finance, duty of Islamic finance is really looking at how we want to tie those instruments that we created to the underlying assets that would therefore protect us from possibly the gyrations that are being, or volatilities that are being seen out of the holding and trading of financial market instruments in the conventional world. So that's the beauty of Islamic finance. But in regards to Malaysia, the instruments itself are actually related to those in the country itself. You want to take on this?
I believe the second question is pertaining to accounting standards. Accounting standards. Malaysia basically, since January this year, basically converge with the Islamic finance, Islamic IFRS, financial reporting standards, international financial reporting standards. So we converge with the international financial reporting standards beginning this year, including the recording of Islamic finance transactions. So in the context of Malaysia, we have brought before the National Sharia Council of both the Central Bank as well as the capital market to get the kind of ruling that the application of international financial reporting standards is compatible with Islamic finance transactions. And it can be done because it is mere recording of the transactions. So the Council basically made a ruling that basically the application of Islamic financial reporting standards is not inconsistent in terms of recording Islamic finance transactions. But however, the IASB, in the course of basically developing IFRS, have never taken into consideration the recording of Islamic finance transactions. And this is where basically Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, through a platform known as ASOC, it's basically a group of nations that espouse to develop accounting standards, is engaging with the international accounting standard boards to basically take into consideration Islamic finance transactions in the course of developing any accounting standards. This is basically an ongoing process that this platform has undertaken to engage with the IASB so that any new standards or even existing standards that the IASB introduced via the IFRS should take into consideration Islamic finance transactions.
Okay, thank you very much.
شكرا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أود أن أخذ من كلام المتحدث في الأوسط من باكستان عندما ذكر بأن الإخفاق أو عدم النجاح في بعض الأحوال في الصيرفة الإسلامية أو البنوك الإسلامية تكمن في الإدارة العليا. والإدارة العليا كما ذكر نوعين أو إدارتين. ما أعرف ترجمة ماشية ولا كيف؟
Okay, no problem. I will translate it for you.
Okay. زين. في الإدارة العليا هنالك مديرين. المدير يعني لا يلتزم بالمعايير أو بالمبادئ الشريعة الإسلامية ويتعامل كأي مدير بنك يبحث عن الفائدة فقط بأي طريقة وبأي وسيلة كانت، وإما والمدير الآخر اللي هو المدير الملتزم بمبادئ الشريعة الإسلامية في تطبيق العملية المصرفية في هذا المجال. فهذين المديرين الذي ذكرهما المتحدث، كيف يمكن لنا أن فعلا نسقط المدير الذي لا يلتزم بهذه المعايير الإسلامية، زين، ونعلي من شأن هذا المدير في الإدارة العليا الذي يضع في اعتباره القيم الإسلامية والمبادئ الإسلامية في واقعه العملي الذي يقوم بإدارته؟ وهل بالإمكان وضع أو الخروج في هذا المؤتمر بتوصية أنا أعتقد أن هنالك تجمع أو منظمة أو جمعية للبنوك الإسلامية، ليس بإمكان هذه الجمعية أو هذه المؤسسة أن تقوم بإحكام السيطرة على مثل هذه الإدارات وفلترتها قبل أن تصل إلى هذا المجال أو إلى هذا المنصب الذي من خلاله تقود العملية الصيرفة الإسلامية، بحيث نستطيع أن نقول أن الصيرفة الإسلامية قوية ومستمرة ومبنية على قواعد وعلى أسس وعلى أنظمة وعلى رقابة شرعية ورقابة مهنية عالية. شكرا.
The entire question, the question was about The question is asking about in your speech you mentioned two sets of top management, their commitment to Islamic banking, and how can we circumvent that set of the top managers that are not really committed to, and they're just there to make profit and not really committed to Islamic banking as such?
I think whether one is committed or not, one of the things that you see over in banks is banks are a highly regulated bodies. They are governed by various prudential guidelines and regulation, tax regulations, etc. And abidance of those rules, whether one believes in those prudential guidelines and regulations or not, or internal guidelines relating to risk and compliance and others, this is mandatory on anyone. Anyone who chooses to be an employee of a bank, he chooses or he says that I will abide by these rules. Whether I believe in them or do not believe in them is a secondary matter. And the same thing holds true for Islamic financial guidelines and rules which are laid down by the respective Sharia scholars and Sharia boards, and those guidelines are available. Now, should the management choose not to abide by those rules, I think they should be, the punitive action is the same as they are not abiding by the prudential guidelines. The ruling is the same as far as they are concerned. So, and that's the reason why you see that the Islamic banking is also progressing, not just in Muslim countries, but there are many other non-Muslims countries where you see Islamic banking also equally progressing. Now, they're not driven by faith. What they're really driven by is professionalism. And they say that if we say that this is Sharia compliant, we are abiding by the rules that are laid down by Sharia, as we are saying that this is complying to the prudential guidelines. So I think the same action and rules should be applied for anyone who is working in an Islamic bank.
Okay, we have time for one last question. Yeah, the gentleman here.
Assalamu alaikum. Malik Timsah, Al-Baraka Banking Group. My question is actually for Mr. Tajuddin. When we look at the Malaysian Islamic capital markets, one of the reasons why it's had such a success is because it enjoys a certain breadth and depth, not just because of the participation of institutions, but also specifically the retail sector and an awareness amongst the corporate sector to raise their, for example, debt through sukuk. One of the problems we have here in the GCC is that the Islamic capital markets is largely institutional based, with very limited participation by the retail sector, and where sukuk issuance is largely coming from the sovereign, quasi-sovereign sector. My question is, what tangible measures must the region's regulatory bodies embark on to ensure that our capital markets, our Islamic capital markets, reach that same level of critical mass? Thank you.
One thing about Islamic finance that is clearly lacking is basically financial access. Right? Financial access here means that it should not only be confined to just basically institutional market, but also to the retail markets. Now, I've been told that basically there are currently about 100 companies that are listed on the stock exchange, Omani stock exchange. Right? As a precursor to developing Islamic finance, simple, very simple. It's the most quickest way to develop one segment of the Islamic finance industry, the Islamic capital market, the Islamic equity market. It's for the National Sharia Board of Oman to screen the 100 companies that are listed on the stock exchange. Designate them as a Sharia compliant stocks or otherwise. That's number one, having a screening by the National Sharia Board. Alternatively, if the National Sharia Board do not have the capacity to screen those 100 companies that are listed on the stock exchange, is to have a third-party screening, either by the like of Ideal Ratings or the Dow Jones or whatnot. Right? Now, what is the impact of the screening of those 100 companies on the stock exchange? The next stage is for any service provider to create indices, right, over the underlying stocks. Now, what happens once those indices are being developed? You will create an intermediation Islamic equity fund industry. You will have the supervisory authorities will issue license to any Islamic fund management companies that wish to manage those Islamic portfolios, Islamic equity portfolios that are designated by either the third party or the National Sharia Advisory Board of Oman. Over a long period of time, you will create an industry. More fund managers or more fund management companies, Islamic fund management companies, would be set up and manage those portfolios. Alternatively, if you feel that the 100 companies is insufficient, is to basically screen GCC companies that are listed on the various stock exchange in the GCC. Immediately, you have a pool of, let's say, of all the GCC countries, you might probably have a pool of 1,000 companies, right? And by using the screening methodology, you will create basically an industry, an Islamic equity industry, the intermediation industry. From that, basically, you create a whole value chain of industry within the intermediation industry. For a start, the Islamic equity market. Secondly, is basically to move beyond that and develop the debt market, which is basically the sukuk market. For that to happen, fortunately, Oman is basically do not have any tax regime. So the issue of having a tax neutrality framework is irrelevant, unlike the context of Malaysia, where basically almost every single transaction have tax implication, right? In the case of Oman, you have no tax implication. So it's very easy for you to develop your sukuk market. In itself, you already have a natural tax neutrality framework. And what is needed next is for Omani corporates, including the Omani government, to issue one first, is basically a benchmark sukuk. So that any corporates later on that wish to issue sukuk can price their sukuk based on the sovereign sukuk. Right? So for that to happen, you need to have laws. If you have civil laws, there is no basically limitation to the application of civil laws to allow for or to accommodate or facilitate Islamic finance transaction, as long as proper registration of title is there. So what I'm saying is, Oman have all the natural framework to basically facilitate and accommodate Islamic finance transactions.
Yes, please.
Thank you for raising this issue of creating indexes and screening the listed companies on the exchange. I'm the Director General of Muscat Securities Market. We have, in fact, started working on these indexes, in fact, and screening some companies so that we create Islamic indexes. And we are going to meet, even some people are attending this meeting from a professional institution who provide indexes, going to meet with them. And I think in the past we did not up to that because we are not allowed to, do this type of activities. Since it is now allowed, I think this is a big opportunity for Muscat Securities Market to just opt for that, route. That's one thing. The other thing on the debt market, the conventional bonds here in Oman have not seen a good takeoff. In fact, there is some sort of issues from time to time from government and from some corporates, but we did not see the debt market developed in a way which is we would be in a satisfactory level. But I suppose with the Islamic financial activities in the area in Oman, there will be some debt, debt market will be developed, especially in the sukuk side. And we are, in fact, waiting for that. And as the regulators, we are, of course, with the Capital Market Authority, going to just provide the right framework for this type of financial instruments, Islamic financial instruments. Thank you
very much. With that, I would like to thank all the distinguished panelists for the enlightened thoughts, and also all the participants in the forum for making it interactive and useful for everybody. Thank you very much.